Tyreek Hill is closing in on the Commanders, and in a few seconds, I'll show you the red flag nobody's talking about in that deal. Adam Peters has 3 names on the table to fix this offense's biggest problem before camp opens, and while the front office stays quiet, ESPN just confirmed something massive about the RFK plan: $24 billion in economic impact for DC. But there's a second half to that story, the one the city's own economists are arguing about right now, and I'm breaking it down in a minute, and we're closing with Treylon Burks, a guy who right now has a real shot to start opposite Jaden Daniels. But there's one number in his history that could blow the whole plan up, and I'm getting into it before this video's over. Raise hail, DMV. This is just getting started. Let's start with the cold numbers, because before I give you opinions, we all need to be standing on the same ground. McLaurin played only 10 games last year due to injury. Behind him on the depth chart, you've got Luke McCaffrey coming off a quiet third-round season, rookie Antonio Williams fresh out of Clemson, Diami Brown, who in 4 years has never stayed healthy long enough to earn a real workload, and Jalen Lane. That's the entire receiver room, not counting Burks, who we'll get to. There is no proven WR2 in that group, 0. So this whole Diggs, Ayuk, Hill debate isn't some social media distraction cooked up by bored bloggers in July. This is, without exaggeration, the #1 problem facing this offense before the season even starts. And honestly, everything else we talk about with this team this summer takes a back seat until this gets settled. I'll start with Tyreek Hill, because he's the option that convinces me the least out of the 3, and I want you to understand exactly why, not just take my word for it. Hill hit free agency after Miami cut him in mid-February. Since then, multiple beat reporters, Alex Kennedy at PFN, Aaron Schatz at ESPN, Mo Moton at Bleacher Report, have all listed Washington among his most logical destinations. Schatz went as far as writing that signing Hill should be Peters' final move before camp. And look, on paper, the argument's there. Hill can still stretch a defense, and Washington's sitting 3rd in the league in cap space, so the money side works fine. But there are too many red flags stacked on one player for me to jump on that train with my eyes closed. He's 32. He's coming off a dislocated knee and a torn ACL from week 4 last season, and nobody actually knows what physical level he comes back at, and if he comes back healthy, is a massive condition to build an offensive plan around. I'm also not going to pretend the off-field history doesn't exist, because it does. Going back to what happened at Oklahoma State in 2014 through a 2023 investigation involving an assault at a marina. Rigo's Rag put it bluntly: don't touch this with a 10-foot pole. I won't go quite that far. I still think if the price is 1 year, cheap, incentive-laden, the risk can be justified. But here's my honest read. Washington can't afford a physical rehab project and a reputation rehab project running at the same time. They need certainty, and Hill, as things stand today, is basically the definition of the opposite of certainty. Now, the name that's got half the fan base on fire, Brandon Ayuk. And I get the fantasy, I genuinely do. Ayuk and Jaden Daniels played together at Arizona State. That connection is real. It's not a marketing invention to sell jerseys. But let's be honest about what's actually happening in San Francisco right now. Ayuk hasn't set foot on an NFL field since week 7 of 2024, nearly 2 years without competing at a professional level. And what we've seen from him the last few weeks isn't quiet, disciplined recovery work, it's a social media campaign. Posts ripping the Niners, videos wearing Commanders gear, and he recently confirmed he fired his agent, Ryan Williams, specifically because Williams has ties to San Francisco's general manager, John Lynch. That's not the behavior of a guy locked in on getting back to elite football. That's someone trying to force his way out through Instagram, and honestly, that pattern worries me more than it should worry any serious front office. To be fair, I'm not writing off the talent. If Ayuk shows up healthy with his head in the right place, the ceiling is still enormous. We're talking about a receiver who can break coverages out of the slot like few others in this league. But if he shows up healthy, and if his head's in the right place, are 2 massive conditionals stacked on top of each other, and this franchise has already lost too many seasons betting on conditionals. Which brings us to Stefon Diggs, and here, I'll be honest with you, I don't get what Adam Peters is waiting on. Diggs is from Maryland. He went to the University of Maryland. Last year, turning 32, he caught 85 passes for 1,013 yards and 4 touchdowns with New England, with an 83.3% catch rate, a career high, while helping the Patriots reach Super Bowl LX. That's not a declining player hoping for one last shot. That's proven recent verifiable production from the most current season we've got as a reference point, and everything legal that had teams hesitant is already resolved. A Massachusetts jury found him not guilty on May 5th in the case tied to his former private chef, and the NFL closed its conduct investigation on June 12th with zero discipline, no cloud, nothing pending. And on top of that, Diggs was spotted training at his alma mater, Maryland, using footballs that already carry the Commanders logo. Don't tell me that's a coincidence, because it isn't. And in an interview with Fox 5, he said flat out he's not ruling out coming back home. Mo Moten over at Bleacher Report summed it up in a way that I think nailed it, where Ajax production leans heavily on Kyle Shanahan's scheme and pre-snap motion to manufacture separation. Diggs is scheme-proof. He wins with pure route running, exactly what a young quarterback like Daniels needs when a play breaks down and he has to improvise. Washington's sitting on $43.91 million in cap space, and the market on Diggs is somewhere around $13.8 million a year. That math works itself out without any financial gymnastics. My honest opinion, no hedging, no softening it. Peters is making a timing mistake waiting on Ayuk. This isn't about talent, it's about availability and risk. Diggs is free today. Diggs is training today. Diggs doesn't need months to learn a new scheme because he never stopped competing. Ayuk is still under contract in San Francisco. Nobody knows for sure when he actually gets released. And once he does, he's walking in rusty after nearly 2 years away from real competitive football. And here's what frustrates me most about this whole situation. Nothing, absolutely nothing, stops Washington from signing both of them. The money is there. The real question was never Diggs or Ayuk, like they had to pick one. The real question is why this front office keeps waiting when they could have both of them pointed at the same goal, giving Jaden Daniels real weapons before the regular season kicks off. Every week that passes without a decision is a week of reps, chemistry, and scheme installation that's gone for good. And in the NFL, that lost time doesn't come back, no matter how much money you throw at it later. Okay, I needed that breath because now we're switching gears completely. This week, the district government, alongside the DC Office of Planning, presented the RFK Campus Master Plan, the document that lays out literally how all 180 acres along the Anacostia River are going to look over the coming decades. And the numbers being thrown around are massive. We're talking about a total project cost of $3.8 billion, with the Commanders putting in at least $2.7 billion of their own money, the largest private investment in DC history, which is not a small detail, and the district contributing $1.1 billion for surrounding infrastructure, parking, and recreational space. The projections call for roughly 30,000 construction jobs, 2,000 permanent jobs, and a total projected economic output of $24.2 billion, with $5.1 billion in tax revenue for the district. Now, I want to be the channel that gives you the full picture here, not just the headline that looks nice on a thumbnail. The DC Council already formally approved this project back in September. This isn't up in the air. There is no real threat of the team ending up somewhere else. That conversation closed months ago, and anyone telling you otherwise is recycling old news for clicks. What just got presented is the master plan with the fine detail, and there's a 45-day public comment period for residents to weigh in. But here's my honest critique, and I'm giving it to you with the same directness I gave you the good news with. These economic impact numbers almost always run hot, and that's not just my opinion pulled out of thin air. It's a documented pattern across basically every stadium project of this scale in the country. Independent groups like Greater Washington ran the opposite math and estimate the real cost to DC taxpayers could land closer to $6 billion once you factor in land being handed over at basically no cost, roughly $600 million in real value. Property tax exemptions worth around $429 million, and the opportunity cost of what didn't get built on that land. Because here's the part that matters. Without a stadium taking up that footprint, those 100 developable acres could have supported 15,000 housing units, close to a third of them income restricted. The current deal calls for 6,000 units, 1,800 of them affordable. That's literally half of what could have gone up there. That said, and I want to be fair to this project too, because I'm not here just to talk trash for free. The council's own economic analysis, done before they passed the legislation last August, projects that this development accelerates by 11 years what would have taken that site to develop organically on its own, and forecasts $26.6 billion in tax revenue over 30 years for the entire campus. Not just the stadium footprint. And there's something here that isn't just a cold number on a spreadsheet. spreadsheet. DC hasn't been able to bid on a Super Bowl, a Final Four, a WrestleMania, none of those national scale events, in nearly 30 years because it hasn't had a world-class domed venue. This changes that in a real, verifiable way. My personal take, the one I owe you as an analyst and not as a cheerleader, the RFK project is good for the region, full stop, I'll stand behind that. But any fan repeating that $24.2 billion number without mentioning the critical analysis from the same economists who study these deals city by city, Kansas City, Cleveland, Las Vegas, they're all similar cases. That's cheerleading, not analysis. The stadium's coming. It's going to be spectacular. I have no doubts about that part. But let's not pretend it's free because it isn't. And DC taxpayers deserve that honesty instead of getting sold only half the story. And to close things out, let's talk about a guy I feel like people still aren't taking seriously enough. BURKS was the 18th overall pick in 2022, the player Tennessee selected with the pick they got for shipping A.J. Brown off to Philadelphia. The comparison was obvious from day one, and that same comparison buried him alive. A.J. Brown with more wiggle between the toe, the knee, and finally a broken collarbone in camp last year that got him cut outright. His career in Tennessee never got off the ground. By the time Washington signed him to the practice squad in October, BURKS had 53 career catches across 3.5 seasons. That's nowhere close to what you expect from a top 18 pick. But here's the part that's got me genuinely fired up, and I want you to hear this out because it's not empty hype. What he showed in Washington, even in a small sample, was real. 8 games, 10 catches, 130 yards, and a one-handed grab on 3rd and goal against Denver that competes, no exaggeration, for the best catch in the entire league last year. We're talking about a guy who'd broken a finger 2 weeks earlier and didn't even consider sitting that game out. Dan Quinn talked about him after that game in language that if you know Quinn's style, you know isn't accidental or press conference filler. He said BURKS' hunger index is high, that he came in looking for a fresh space to rebuild his career from scratch, and that the intensity he competes with shows up every single day. That kind of comment, coming from a head coach who doesn't hand out praise for free, means something real. Now for the honest, critical part I owe you, because we're not just here to lay epic music over highlight clips. In 4 NFL seasons, BURKS has played 35 games, caught 63 passes total, and scored just 2 touchdowns in his entire career. That's under 16 catches a season on average, a number that, if we're being honest with the analysis, should worry you a little. The physical talent isn't in question. 6'2", 225 pounds, built more like a tight end than a traditional receiver, capable of playing outside, in the slot, or as an H-back coming out of motion. One-on-one against a linebacker in coverage. That's simply not a fair fight for the linebacker. But talent was never the question with BURKS. The question always was, and still is, whether his body lets him play 16 or 17 games in a row without breaking down. And that question still doesn't have an answer. Peters gave him a 1-year deal up to $4 million, the classic prove-it contract. He's competing directly with Luke McCaffrey, who hasn't lived up to his 3rd-round billing, rookie Antonio Williams, who's bringing real slot hype out of Clemson, and veteran Van Jefferson, who's reportedly drawn real praise from Dan Quinn during minicamp. My honest read, no sugarcoating, every signal points to BURKS entering training camp as the favorite to open the season as the starting WR2, but favorite on day 1 and still starting in week 10 are 2 completely different stories in this specific player's career. If he stays healthy, this becomes the receiver room's surprise story of the year. If he doesn't stay healthy, we're right back exactly where we started again. That's everything I've got today. 3 completely different stories in tone and scale, but all 3 point at the same underlying truth. This franchise is standing at a decision point on the field and off it. Peters needs to solve the receiver room before camp opens, and every day that passes without a decision is a day lost. The city needs to decide with its eyes open whether the real price tag on RFK is worth what it promises on paper. And BURKS needs to prove, again, that his body will let him stay on the field long enough for all that talent to actually matter. I already gave you my take on all 3, no filter, digs over Ayuk, healthy skepticism on the stadium numbers, and conditional belief in BURKS. Now it's your turn. Drop it in the comments. Are you signing Diggs today, or are you still waiting on San Francisco to cut Ayuk loose? Raise hail. See you in the next one.